Hey, hi, and hello, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and fuck you. No, it's fun. Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and let's talk about one of the biggest bands of all time, the Fab Four: George Jetson, The Ring, John Paul Jones, and Pop McCarthy. Those are the Beatles. Over the years that I've been on the internet doing musical commentary, I've noticed that there's like an increase in the ease and safety people feel logging onto the internet just to pop in and be like, you know what? The Beatles suck. Drop in with a little Beatles hot take like, these Beatles kind of lame, overrated if you ask me. It's annoying, and it's just like an ugly blemish to see when I'm in any kind of like music-based community or forum or discussion area on the internet. And it's got little to do with like any favorability I have toward the Beatles or their music. I mean, sure, they've made some amazing records, some groundbreaking records, some of my favorite albums of all time. I think Abbey Road is one of the best produced albums of all time. I like my Beatles just fine. I'm not a super fan, though. I'm not like collecting every solo album and excusing every horrible thing John Lennon ever did. You don't need to love the Beatles or shovel their music to be a music fan or have a valid opinion on music. There are plenty of people in my life who are, for the most part, Beatles neutral, and that's completely okay. What I'm talking about here is people who go out of their way to just shit on the Beatles for seemingly no reason whatsoever, and the reason it bugs me and it annoys me is because I don't think it has much to anything to do with the music. And to the extent that it does, maybe it's because, I don't know, their stuff is just like aged over the years and just doesn't aesthetically sound that contemporary or, punchy in comparison with a lot of modern music aesthetics, which is fine. I like that a lot of older music sounds old. Over time, it becomes like a really cool capsule or like a fingerprint that shows us how stuff used to sound at one point, which is why sometimes it sucks when remasters take away that old charm of the way a record used to come across back when it was originally released, but that's another discussion. Still, though, even if the Beatles' music is and sounds old at this point, there's lots of old music out there that doesn't seem to catch as many bullets as the Beatles stuff does, or is even massively popular with younger people today. Be that Steely Dan, be that Fleetwood Mac, be that David Bowie. So it's not simply that their music is old. I don't think it's the quality of the music either. Yeah, we could talk about the quality of John Lennon and Paul's songwriting on some tracks, and obviously Ringo didn't build himself up to be the greatest drummer in rock music history. And for sure, across their discography, they did steal a fair amount of song ideas from other artists and genres and cultures. They're certainly not unique in that being a band from the 60s and 70s. The Beatles and their music and their mostly boomer fandom does come from a bygone era, does usually come with like, some old headedness. I get it as far as perspectives and, maybe also like aesthetics and content of the music. It doesn't represent the era that you're from and that you identify with. And that's okay. And look, I get it. New music in many ways is more exciting than old music. If it wasn't, I wouldn't spend all this time reviewing it and talking about it. But as long as it's new to you, old music is new music too, and you can learn a lot from it. You can also learn a lot about new music from old music in terms of like how we got to where we are today, or where certain sounds or vibes and aesthetics may have originated from. And personally, I feel blessed to live in an era where so much great older stuff is within easy access, which is part of what confuses me about the Beatles' hatred in general, because I feel like culturally and aesthetically, the internet, with it making it so easy to listen to and try just about anything, even stuff that would normally be out of your wheelhouse and out of your comfort zone. It's created a lot of music fans who are listening to artists or listening to albums from countries or certain genres that they maybe wouldn't have tried before, because without the internet, they wouldn't have had like an exposure point to it. Without the internet, they wouldn't have been able to consume it so easily and like get into it. But for whatever reason, sometimes I still see like a bit bit of a generational divide going in both directions in terms of older people hating newer music, younger people hating older music, when streaming services have already made it so easy to listen to a bunch of stuff that, again, you wouldn't have been listening to otherwise. Why is it music from a different generation that causes you to sort of like, sit up and raise an eyebrow and just like shrug your shoulders? Nobody says you have to like them or love them or listen to them. You're just trying to be and look different. And the irony of this is that there's so many people out there throwing out dumb, half-baked, cold, I hate the Beatles takes that you're not being original or interesting at all. And look, I also know you're trying to blow off some steam, say some silly trolley stuff on the internet. And because Beatlemania isn't what it once was, you could shit on them a little bit and you're not going to have 10 dozen people jump down your throat unless, maybe you're on like a page somewhere on Facebook Marketplace. You need to grow up and form some music opinions that are actually going to get you some shit. Form a music opinion that people will hate on you for 10 plus years. Get one of those. Different shirt. I want to be lenient a little bit on people who don't enjoy the Beatles music and say, look, I get it if you don't like their stuff. There may be a lot of people out there who genuinely get nothing out of their music, whether it be due to some kind of cultural or generational connection or something else. For a lot of individuals, relatability is like one of the most prime factors when it comes to listening to and enjoying music. Is the music telling a story that relates to me in some way? Do I relate to the artist in some way? Do I see myself in the art that I'm listening to or my experiences? Which, seeing a reflection of yourself in the media that you consume and generally representation in media, not bad things. And given that, I can see why there may be a lot of younger people out there who, don't necessarily get a whole lot out of listening to some old pop music from a band hailing from Liverpool. Best accent ever of all time. I'm amazing at impressions. Last thing I want to say is this current era that we live in where there is a lot of unchecked Beatles hate. I wonder if this desire to shit on the band because of what era they're from and what maybe they represent in some people's heads, will that kind of pass by, go away, and people will begin to consume the band's music much in the same way they do classical music. Not to say artistically what the Beatles do is on the same level of the great composers out there. No, I'm suggesting people essentially listening to their music while having quite literally no connection whatsoever to the era that they came from. Not just in terms of not being born back then, but also not knowing people who lived back then. Maybe not knowing a whole lot about the history and politics and culture of that era as well. In that sense, future listeners would really be consuming the band's music entirely in a vacuum. In that context is when audiences may be able to not completely objectively, but at least maybe in a more objective fashion, consume what the band had to offer and really judge it based on its merit and not the long lasting effects of Beatlemania or whatever, or feeling like the music is being shoved down your throat by a generation that you don't care for or feel like you're at odds with. And lastly, I'm curious as to whether or not there will be another Beatles or another Michael Jackson or another whoever. I'm thinking of stars from past musical decades that were just famous and beloved the world over, which, sure, we also have some big stars today, but the difference mainly with the music industry today versus, years ago is that there's so much saturation now and everything is moving at such a quick speed. And not only that, but nearly everything that is in the mainstream is based on some kind of really quick, fast, immediate wave or trend. And again, with that saturation, with that speed of trends, with that everything, will, anything that is popular today, really withstand the test of time and have the same kind of longevity down the road that the Beatles are still currently enjoying with 30 million monthly Spotify listeners, despite their last full-length album having come out decades ago. And if some of these artists do manage to make it as long as the Beatles, one day will there be a generation of Drake haters who are essentially shitting on him because he represents a bygone era that they just don't see eye to eye with or don't identify with in any way. And of course, a lot of these people will go back and see my videos and say, you know what, that Anthony Fantano guy, he was right. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments. Over here next to my head is another video that you could check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, the Beatles, forever.